So this video is going to be a continuation of section 2.2. Our last video we made a categorical frequency distribution. Now we're going to make what's called a grouped frequency distribution. And we'll go through that later on in the video. It's the same essential questions. How can we represent data more clearly? All right, so let's go through a problem. All right, so this problem says these data represent the record high temperatures in degrees Fahrenheit for each of the 50 states. Construct a grouped frequency distribution for the data using 7 classes. All right, so if you notice here, this is our raw data, and there's just way too many numbers that we can't just create a table and just write each number down and just tally up each number individually, because there's just way too many numbers that would take too long, and it's just not really going to make it any easier for us to look at and then to read and interpret. Because remember, the raw data is hard for us to read and interpret. The distribution tables are supposed to make it easier for us to do that. When we had this problem, we only had 4 different ones. So we could only just pick those 4 and create those as our classes. When we have this much different varying data, we can't just use each number for our data. So what we need to do is create what's called class limits or class size. Now our classes need to be between 5 and 20. They tell us 7 in this problem. I'm going to go through some things that you want to look for in case a problem doesn't tell you how many, but they tell us 7. All right, so let's get started on this problem. All right, so the first thing you'll do is you'll create this table here where you'll have 5 columns, your first being your class limits, your second being your class boundaries, and tally, frequency, and cumulative frequency. Now, our first one that we made for the blood types, we just had our classes because we only had 4 of them, A, B, and O. All right, now, as I was talking about, we have way too much data here for us to write out each number once. So we're going to have we're going to create our classes a little bit differently. They tell us 7 classes. So what you first need to do is you need to find the range of your data. And what that is you take the highest number and you subtract the lowest number. All right, so if we look over here, our lowest number is this 100 because nothing was in the 90s as our record highs. And then our highest is this 134. Nothing is higher than that. So we would do 134 minus 100, and that is equal to 34. So that's our range. That's all of the numbers or all of the possible, from the lowest to the highest, our record highs could be. So you take that range and you divide it by the number of classes that you want, which we want 7. So that will then give us 4.9. Right? So what's important is if a question doesn't tell you how many classes that you want or that they want you to have, whenever you do this, we always round up. Even if the number was, say, 4.1, this would still round up to 5. Right? So you always round up. No matter what, you always round up when you're doing this, your class size. So when you're determining how many classes you want, you always want this number when you round up to be odd. And that's something that we'll talk about later on as to why you want that, right? So if you say pick a class, and let's say you picked a class size and it gave you, say, 3.9, and you round it up, it's 4, then that lets you know that you want to pick a different amount of classes, all right? So we know here 34 divided by 7 is 4.9. We've always round up, so that means our class size is going to be 5. So that means every single one of our classes will have a size of 5. So when we go to this table, the first thing that we will fill in here, then I'm going to use green. First thing we fill in is our lowest number possible. So our lowest number possible is that 100, right? So that is our lowest class size that we can possibly have. And each class is 5 spaces long, or 5 units wide. So we would have 100, that's 1, 101, 102, 103, and 104. So that means this is how wide this class size has to be. So I wrote this out for you first because if you want to not have to write them all out, all you need to do is take your lower class size, you add how much you want for your class size, so that would then be 105, but then you need to subtract 1 for it because we're including that first number 100, and that is equal to 104. Right? And if you notice when we count this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it stopped at 104 because we started with 100. So if you want to just add them, just make sure you subtract 1 at the end. All right, so that means that our high class limit is 104. So that means our first class size is between 100 and 104. So any numbers that fall between 100 and 104 will be written and tallied in this row. And then to find the rest of your class limits, you just simply add 5 to our lower boundary. So 105, 110, 115, 120, 125, and 130. And then we will add 5 to our upper class limit. So 109, 114, 119, 124, 129, and 134. Right? The reason why we have to round up is if we round it down in some of these cases, so say that this was 4, then we wouldn't necessarily fit all of our numbers within this class size. So by rounding up, it guarantees that every single number in this raw data will be included in this table. So that's why we have to round up anytime we're figuring out our class size. All right, our class boundary, remember, we're adding 0.5 and subtracting 0.5. So since we have 2 numbers here, though, we're only going to subtract from the lower limit and we're only going to add to the upper limit. So this is going to be a little bit cramped for me to write, but 99.5 through 104.5, right? And then I'm going to fill in the rest of the table. All right, so now the rest of the table is filled in. And remember, this number as our upper boundary has to be this 104.5 because there can't be any gaps between any of our classes. So that's why we always had to make sure that we are writing these boundaries, because this says 104 and 105, so we need to make sure that this class includes anything from 104.5 and down, and this one includes anything from 104.5 and up. There can't be any gaps in any of our classes or in any of our numbers, so it needs to be continuous throughout. All right, so now we're just going to go ahead and we're going to tally up all these points. So I'm just going to read down each row. So 112, that will fall in this one. 110, that will fall in this one. 107 falls in this one. 116 falls in this one. 120 in this one. All right, I'm just going to fill in the rest of this table now. And I want you to pause the video, fill the tallies in yourself and the frequency in yourself, and to see if yours matches up with mine. All right, so that is how your table should look like. And remember, the tally, we just went through and we just tallied up every single number that we had over here in its correct region. And then our frequencies, we just counted them up. And now our cumulative frequency, I didn't fill that in because I want to do that together. That is where we're just adding up each row as we go. So here we're at 2 because that's the only row we have. This cumulative frequency is 10 because it's 8 plus 2. This one we would then do 10 plus 18, so it's 28. This one we would then do 28 plus 13, so it's 41. 41 plus 7 is 48, and then plus 1 is 49, and plus another 1 is 50. All right, so now looking at this data here, this raw data in this table, we can now start to make some observations about this. Since 41 of our data falls between 119 or lower, we can say that 82% of the U.S.'s high temperature is never more than, or is not more than 119 degrees. So we can say that most states in the U.S. does not experience degrees or temperatures that are 120 or more. We can talk about some other things as well using this, where that about the certain percentages that are at between 100 and 104. It just allows for us to look at this data a little bit differently and to visualize and see what's going on a little bit more. All right, that's it for this video, and then we'll do some problems in class.